nature-based solutions try to solve in a single solution different challenges. Treatment wetlands should not be confused with phytoremediation. Who is removing the pollutant, how they are sized in terms of land occupancy. Academics should indicate the innovation to the practitioner, but they also have to listen to the practitioner, go outside and monitor real system in real conditions. If you don't take the risk to go at that scale, you risk to stay stuck to say, it's promising, but in Italy we used to say, throw the heart beyond the fence.
That is Anacleto Rizzo, partner at IRIDRA Italy and current president of the Global Wetland Technology Consortium. Anacleto is a trained hydraulic civil engineer specialized in nature-based solutions, in particular treatment wetlands. His career marries cutting-edge research and development with practical implementation and global engagement and training. He works across sustainable water management, nature-based solutions for wastewater treatment, climate change adaptation, and sustainable drainage systems, daring to innovate by pushing direct implementation and design beyond the lab. My name is Peter Marcus Bach, and this is the Grand Challenges Podcast, a show about inspiring individuals who are stepping up to tackle the global challenges that our world is facing in their own unique ways. We reflect on the many out-of-the-box ways our guests have navigated the complexity and intricacies of our environment at the cutting edges of science, engineering, technology, and design. On today's show, Anacleto and I delve into the power of treatment wetlands as both a versatile and multifunctional nature-based solution and the history behind their development. We discuss how innovation in the field brings tremendous value for technology adoption, changing perceptions in Italy on such technologies, global initiatives, and urgent needs for accelerating NBS adoption going into the future. Visit tgcpodcast.show for detailed information and show notes of this episode. Thank you for joining us today, and please enjoy the show. Glad to have you here today, Anacleto.
Glad, Peter, to be here with you. Thank you for inviting me.
Almost the end of the week, but what a good moment to sit down and have a nice chat about a topic that we haven't had for a while on the podcast, or it's been showing up less and less, but nature-based solutions, here we come again.
Yeah, it would be difficult for me to speak of something else, so thank you for bringing back this topic to your podcast.
Well, we will cover your journey, which does include something else, but we won't spoil it anytime soon. But before that, I do think we should also exchange a bit about our favorite pastimes, because we are both geeks and we do enjoy good movies and also good games in particular. But let's start with the movies aspect. What are some of your favorite movies? Because you said you really do enjoy something out of the ordinary.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I have to say that I was a little bit more curious in the past. Now I'm getting lazy, but my favorite movie are something between horror. I would say David Lynch, that passed away, unluckily. They are my favorite movie, but even something a little bit surrealistic. So I have many strange movies that I don't know if anyone has seen.
Okay.
Like in Italian is Essere John Malkovich, being John Malkovich is one of my favorites. So yes, definitely.
I've heard of that. And yeah, I have yet to watch Twin Peaks. Quite intrigued by it. At some point I'll start it. And I only just realized that David Lynch also made the original Dune film adaptation.
Yeah, definitely. It was quite strange. I had to say that it was one of the less best movie, let me say, of David. But still, it was strange. I prefer the new one for Dune, but there are many other movies excellent that I can suggest about David Lynch.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say much about the comparison. I do like the new Dune adaptation. So maybe it's time to go watch the older one and do the comparison.
Yeah.
But you like horror games as well, from what I hear?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, in my adolescence, I think I played all the horror game. I'm more a PlayStation guy, so console guy. And I grew up with Resident Evil and Silent Hill. I played all of them.
Okay.
But my favorite is Silent Hill, of course.
I guess for the listeners who don't know, I mean, some you might be taken back to your childhood, and others, I guess growing up, you always had to decide between PlayStation and Nintendo. And Nintendo was more the fun party games and games you would play over and over again, whereas PlayStation was more narrative. And yeah, Resident Evil versus Silent Hill. I've never played Silent Hill. I've played Resident Evil, both very well-known horror games during their time and still going, actually. They're getting remakes now from what I hear.
Yeah, definitely. Yes.
So
also Silent Hill, they made The main difference was Resident Evil was a little bit more jump scare. And Silent Hill was a little bit more psychology. And indeed, this is why there is a little bit more link with David Lynch movie in some Silent Hill games. So it was interesting.
I mean, I played Resident Evil for the first time on a PlayStation 4. Funnily enough, in virtual reality, because I got the virtual reality headset. Oh la la. Yes, the jump scares were pretty scary. You had to be careful.
Yeah, and this remind me the fact that I'm getting older. I'm getting also a little bit more scary.
Oh yeah.
And this is a funny part that I can tell you is that I love horror game, but if they are in third person, so I have to see the puppet that is moving around. Is horror. The psychological part is heavy, but I have a little bit of control. And it was fun instead. I tried recently to play first person horror and it was a mess.
Oh, yeah.
And I have a funny episode that I can tell you if you like.
Do tell me, yeah.
Yes. So I was playing one of these jump scare typical one. I don't even remember the name. I was playing on the bed. There was because I'm very geek. So if I play horror game, we should be in the dark with the headphone, very inside it, let me say. And I was on the bed on the night with my wife that was sleeping nearby me. And I was playing on the PC, laptop in this case. I don't even remember the name, but at a certain moment, there was a typical jump scare of that horror movie in which you are going around in a haunted house and some ghost coming outside in the middle of nowhere. No. And I throw away the laptop and my wife wake up in the middle, say, "What?" And said, "No, it's just an horror game." And the funny part is that when I tried to finish a second time again, there was a second jump scare. I screamed so loud and my wife told me, maybe it's better if you stop. And I was recognizing that my hand on the mouse was shaking a bit. So I was starting to think maybe I'm not brave anymore in the horror movie and I cannot imagine VR. So VR is other level.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I didn't complete the game in VR. Eventually, I think I decided to also play in third person. So makes a big difference, actually.
A lot.
But hey, listeners, some tips for you if you want to get into some horror games, if that's if that's what you like. But yeah, I guess lots of fun pastimes to also give us something else from our daily adventures in the world of nature-based solutions. But yeah, just looking at your journey, we're both civil engineers, and you studied in Politecnico di Torino. And yeah, I guess... Is it the similar case of wanting to go into engineering or design and just not being able to draw like myself? Or what's the story behind your decision to pursue engineering?
My story was that I essentially completely randomly selected my engineering course because essentially my father that I loved, he told me, I'm not going to pay you any, soft course. I mean, no philosophy, not even physics, chemistry. I was good in maths. And he told me, I can pay you engineering school. It's okay. And I started to look the possibility of engineering training, and no one liked me except civil engineer, but just because there was a mention about water. So I just randomly picked engineer. But the problem is that in Turin, the hydraulic part is mainly linked with the structural engineering. So I studied a lot of stuff that I dislike a lot. Anything about concrete, building, structure, all this part that I really dislike. But it's okay. We were able to finish it. But the link with nature-based solution actually started at the very end. The very last course of the civil engineer was fluvial hydraulics. Made by a professor, Luca Ridolfi, that was one of my first mentor. It was a little bit more about research. So it was a sort of escape strategy to start the PhD on topics that were a little bit far away from anything that I studied before.
Interesting. And we'll definitely get to that. But you remind me of similarities in my own journey. You do engineering, the hard math and trying to design stuff. And yes, structural engineering can be quite repetitive at times. I mean, I personally like structural engineering. And they say, you need a structure to support the stuff you're doing. When I think Italy, I think a lot of the historical structures, the aqueducts. But yeah, nature-based solutions somehow pops up at the very end. It's like when it's finishing, it starts getting interesting. And so, yeah, similar journeys, similar stories. But as you told me, some of the conversations we've had, that you didn't actually go deep into nature-based solutions until much later. You actually pursued a PhD, starting with a topic that's, I guess, quite interesting, but can be described in a funny way.
Yeah, do you want to say it or I'm going to say it?
Yeah, well, you can go for it. And I have a.
Well, I want to quote because this is not my way of thinking about my PhD, but there was a colleague of mine, Andrea Cagninei, if you're listening, I'm thinking about you, that told me that my PhD was the most interesting among our group because it was the one about farting from a paddy rice field.
So rice flatulence.
Rice flatulence, exactly.
In a more, I guess, let's say, formal expression.
The formal expression is that I was studying in my PhD the emission of greenhouse gases from paddy rice fields, because Italy, maybe many don't know, I even didn't know before my PhD, that Italy is one of the biggest producer of rice in Europe, in the northwest of Italy, in Piedmont. But paddy rice fields are one of the biggest emitter as agriculture in terms of methane. And so this is why methane, farting, and whatever. No, but actually is very similar to the farting, because essentially what's happening is that paddy rice fields usually are grown in saturated soil.
Mm-hmm.
There is this organic matter that is reduced to methane in a lack of oxygen. So you have these methane bubbles that are trapped they are not mainly escaping from the water, but actually they are escaping from the root parenchyma system of the rice. So root, by bringing the oxygen from the parenchyma is a sort of empty pipe inside the plant, bringing the oxygen down to survive in saturated soil. But the bubble gas use the same pipe, let me say, to emit the bubble of gas of methane. So essentially it's like when we are evacuating our gas in our stomach.
Very elegant way of putting it. But yeah, a serious topic and a serious concern, because methane is a greenhouse gas. And well, I mean, global methane emissions are, 60% human, 40% natural. And I guess the other source that we can relate a lot of these methane emissions to are cows. Actually, I was looking up some statistics. So livestock contributes a substantial amount. Cows emit roughly 33% of total global methane because they burp a lot. And rice paddies actually make up the other large chunk. And why methane is such a big concern is actually it's more efficient at trapping heat than CO2, for example. It has a lifespan in the atmosphere of about, say, 10 years. I didn't even know a lot of these stats, so it was interesting to learn a bit about it and how it compares. But yeah, trying to mitigate that, I think, also helps us target some of the key greenhouse gases and in a way that makes sense.
Yeah, because the methane, if I go just by memory, is 27 times something. I didn't check the last update of IPCC report, but the idea is that one molecule of methane in the atmosphere is equivalent to 27 molecules of CO2.
Okay, wow.
And the point is that when I started the PhD, it was something like 15 years ago, more or less. It was the beginning of the policy in climate change mitigation. And there was even starting some discussion to limit some agriculture of the paddies in comparison to other kind of agriculture that do not require saturated soil to reduce strategically this emission. And this is why there was the interest of this PhD that was mainly modeling PhD, in which we modeled the biogeochemistry of soil and of methane production and emission, and investigate possible mitigation measure that is not compromising the crop, but still valid for reducing the methane emission.
But you didn't just focus on rice paddies. In fact, the PhD expanded your knowledge and actually brought you closer to nature-based solutions as well, in particular the topic of treatment wetlands. So what was the link there, and how did you decide to then shape the topic around something that's broader than just rice paddies?
Yeah, it was lucky. I was lucky, and it is interesting because sometimes you switch your life completely randomly, as I choose civil hydraulic engineer by chance. Also, treatment wetland entered in my PhD because with my PhD supervisor, we had seen interest. The PhD was going well, so we published everything that we had to publish, and we still had 1 year before the end of the PhD. And we observed that the possibility of a postdoc, but in general also of a post-career in paddy rice field methane emission was not so good, let me say.
Okay.
And so there was this idea to open a second topic during my PhD. And just randomly, because I was a modeler, so I was developing the modeling. Because I was curious, I was reading reference paper back and forth and whatever, I came to a review paper of modeling treatment wetland.
Okay.
And that was fascinating because I didn't know anything about treatment wetland. And especially as a civil engineer in Polytechnic of Turin, we didn't do sanitation engineering. So I didn't know anything about wastewater treatment. What was fascinating for me as a researcher was their parallelism with essentially paddy rice field is a wetland, treatment wetland is a wetland. And both of them, they have media, bacteria, plants. And so the biogeochemical cycle that we were studying to mitigate the methane emission in the paddy rice field are essentially the same that we were modeled in the treatment wetland modeling literature, but with a different approach. And this was strange for me because I was studying, say, come on, carbon is still carbon. What is this BOD and COD? So I was at that level. And but it was interesting. And so we decided to write to the professor, author of this review paper, Gunther Langengraber, because I still had to do my abroad period during the PhD. So I spent 2 months in Vienna in the office of Professor Gunther Langengraber. And this is my link, starting link with treatment wetland work.
In a way, understanding processes, a natural process that can then be applied in a much broader sense, because, yeah, I guess those who've never seen rice paddies, I mean, it is what the name says, it's a paddy. So you have, these vegetations, these strands of, rice growing out of pools of water, and compared it to a treatment wetland, which often, people relate to open marshes, very similar in looks and therefore also processes with a few slight differences. And yeah, I mean, Gunther's a big name in that field, and we'll have to get him on the show at some point. Gunther, if you're listening, invitation's open. But yeah, I guess why not try applying what you've learned and transferring the knowledge that you've developed to another field?
If I may add a technicality, what was interesting was that modeling in paddy rice field were mainly linked to the modeling of biogeochemical cycle in nature, in biochemistry ecology modeling. And so we were talking, for instance, of dissolved or carbon, total carbon, and whatever. In treatment wetland, instead, the modeling was trying to adapt the modeling for activated sludge treatment plant to treatment wetland. So we were talking about COD, BOD, carbon oxygen demand, biological oxygen demand.
Different metrics, yeah.
We were talking about bacteria development. So it was different equation for the same biogeochemical process. So it was big again, but interesting.
Yeah. And maybe a quick 101 on treatment wetlands would be useful to our listeners because they've been around for quite some time. And I guess, I know them from the stormwater side because we use them in, water sensitive urban design, blue-green infrastructures. Whereas I think you've dealt with them a lot, starting from the wastewater side and then expanding upon it. So we kind of met in the middle, coming from both ends. but they come in different shapes and sizes. Essentially, it's vegetation, soil, and water, and it's usually a pretty moist environment. But, what kinds of wetlands do we have, or how do we classify them?
Yeah, this is very interesting because I knew about your group instead from stormwater, coming from the other side. And I prepared for the JCUD conference in which we met. I had a poster on trying to make order on the nomenclature between treatment wetland and green-blue infrastructure. And it was interesting because treatment wetland essentially are constructed wetland is another term, because we reconstruct wetland for treating a specific wastewater. Usually the origin was domestic wastewater, so you can imagine a single house system. But the group is a group that is working with this technology since 30 years. And we now reach scale. Of course, we cannot treat a big city with treatment wetland, mainly due to land constraint. But the biggest system is treating thousands of person equivalent, thousands of inhabitants. We designed, for instance, a system for 20,000 people. There is a system in Middle East for 60,000 inhabitants. So we are talking about a potential big technology, not a super decentralized solution only for single houses. And the interesting point is that the group that I'm part of, the specialist group of treatment wetland of the International Water Association, in 30 years of career, came out with so many different approaches. And the most simple way to describe the technology is the hydraulic distinction, because we have surface wetland, free water surface wetland, that is more similar to what you call as a wetland in green-blue infrastructure.
Yep.
So you see the water, you see the plants, it's like a paddy, as you said before.
Looks like a pond with vegetation growing out of it somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, shallower than a pond, because you have to keep water level no more than 50 centimeter. Otherwise, you can plant floating plants, but we never reach more than 1 meter. Otherwise, we cannot have the plant inside.
Yep.
But this is surface water. This was the first technology tested 30 years ago. But the interesting point is that actually the other options are mainly based on subsurface flow treatment wetland. It means that during the operation, you don't see the water on the top. The water is flowing under the porous media, except when you feed the system. When you pulse, you can see the water. But essentially, they flow, and they can flow horizontally or vertically. And they can be fed continuously or in batch. Mm-hmm. And these are not just for making the things more complicated, but the idea is that we have the possibility with treatment wetland to recreate conditions that are aerobic, anoxic, saturated, and play with the same process that we have in activated sludge, essentially, because they are biological treatment, essentially.
Because you need conditions with lots of oxygen, because certain processes need that, but also conditions with very little oxygen so that you can remove certain types of pollutants. I guess, 101 treatment.
Yeah, and mainly this subsurface flow wetland is what you call bioretention cell. So here is the tricky point of misunderstanding between our two communities, in my view, because if you think about wetland, you have in mind water, but you are studying bioretention cell that is a mix of water, media, and plants. Yeah. And it's the same of subsurface flow wetland. So we need to talk.
We need to talk, yes. Well, I mean, we've had bioretention cells featured on the show before, both in episode 20 with Belinda Hatt, who's very knowledgeable about the technology in Australia, and episode 24 with John Hathaway, who knows about the technology's use in the US. So also big contrast there, but generally accepted as the so-called Swiss Army knife of blue-green infrastructures because it's very customizable. But yes, we have to talk because essentially, we are designing these different technologies for, treating stormwater, treating wastewater. But as you've demonstrated in your work with the rice paddies and the treatment wetlands, it comes down to very similar processes, and it's really about honing in on what exactly do we need for the goal that we're striving for. And in the case of water treatment, it is these conditions full of oxygen, very little oxygen, aerobic, anaerobic, and how do we move the water through it? because by moving through it, these natural filter medias, they'll be able to then remove certain pollutants that we have to remove. And so, yeah.
If I may add another one-to-one clarification that can be useful for a not expert listener is treatment wetlands should not be confused with phytoremediation. Because from the theory of sanitation engineering, treatment wetlands are mainly attached biofilm reactor. Who is removing the pollutant, how they are sized in terms of land occupancy, is based on the capability of the bacteria that are growing on the media to remove the pollutant. Plants are fundamental because they have all the side effects to create an environment suitable for the bacteria to develop. But we are not treating wastewater, let me be very not technical, sucking the pollutant from the root and accumulating to the plant. This is phytoremediation. Phytoremediation is mainly used as a nature-based solution for soil restoration, contaminated soil restoration. We have this effect of plant uptake, but it's not the main one that justify the land that we require for treating a certain amount of flow or a certain amount of inhabitants. So, and this is tricky because in Italy, not we as IRIDRA, but we as a community of experts in Italy, we have picked phytodepurazione, that is close to phytodepuration. Phytodepuration is not existing as a word. If you read phytodepuration somewhere, is an Italian that has translated wrongly the technology. Let me use this podcast to say also this.
No, don't worry. I do that with other languages too. If I don't know the word, I attempt to borrow it from another language.
No, but the point is that this wrong name still bring 30 years after the technology is in the market, we still receive questions like, but if the plants are not growing well, we are not treating the wastewater. Or in the senescence period during winter when the plants are yellowing, it means that it's not working. Or if we don't have photosynthesis, it means that it's not working. No. Okay, this is a clear no. With big N and big O.
I guess even though the technology is around, one misunderstanding in terminology or in just explaining the process, I think can lead to lots of confusion. And so if your treatment wetland, if the plants are not growing, doesn't mean it's not working. It's just not meant to be a sign of success. And do you find that this lack of knowledge is generally pervasive at the moment with nature-based solutions? People, they see it work in one place, they put it in their local area, and it's just not performing the way they expect?
Well, what I see is a lack of knowledge in terms of the basic sizing and implementation guidelines. I mean, we have, especially at the very small scale, because at the small scale, you feel, come on, it's just a treatment wetland. It's plenty of indication that we call rule of thumb, that is similar to what you have the catchment ratio by which you design stormwater nature-based solution. No? And you say it's few square meter per person, and then we can size, who cares? Actually, there is a knowledge of 30 years of experience from a community, book written, guidelines written, but if these guidelines are not entering in the right context, you can have an entire local territory, but I'm speaking from Italy now, but we have a province that still are designing wetland like 30 years ago, and since they have wrong reference in their guidelines, we are struggling to let entering innovation, because now in 30 years, the community of treatment wetland also developed the so-called innovative solution that occupy less area at the same performance. I'm thinking about aerated wetland, or I'm thinking about French reed bed. We use more or less half of the area that we were using if we were designing in 30 years ago. But if you go in front of the local, you say, I'm going to give you treatment wetland for half of the area, they don't believe you.
Okay.
So there is lack of entrance of, indeed, this is why the specialist group, which I'm part of IWA, the treatment wetland, a couple of years ago, developed a working group that was called Mainstreaming Treatment Wetland. The main objective was to produce true open access book to mainstream the technology, because we know that it works, but the other don't know. essentially.
But it seems that current practice favors the guides that they've used for the last 30 years, and the repetitive approach of designing it, getting the size as per the guide, and being done with it because it's time efficient. Well, they haven't had any major problems in the last 30 years, and therefore, why should they change, I guess?
Yeah, exactly like this.
Yeah. But it seems like the arguments for making the footprint of these wetlands smaller is also one that people should be looking at, because oftentimes, and I've seen this in some experiences in Australia in particular, where wetlands are implemented more widely, but they are limited because of the space constraints. Wetlands can be pretty big, and you need to design it in a way that, especially in the case of stormwater now, that you can actually maximize the flow path of stormwater through the system. So it's not just digging a hole, putting some plants in and throwing the water in. It does involve quite a bit of deep thinking of how you're going to use the space, the terrain, and also where you're going to position the plants so that you maximize the water flow through the system.
Yeah, it's true. The point is that in some areas, still local, you can have some skepticism on the technology. And often when we investigate this skepticism is mainly due to some failing implementation.
Yeah.
And this failing implementation is because maybe they were out of the design guidelines of the scientific community. But This is why, because at the beginning of technology, there was a little bit of Far West. So you had a rule of thumb that was saying to you, in this amount of area, you can treat certain amount of people. But this is just sizing. Then you have the implementation, selecting the right media, selecting the right plants, and whatever. So if you implement incorrectly or you design incorrectly, you have a failing system. Treatment wetland as nature-based solution, apart for the innovative solution like I rated, they are passive solutions. So if you make something wrong in the design, you cannot change it.
Yeah.
And so it was enough one bad example in a local context to have the, I don't know, in Italy we say word by word, mouth by mouth feedback that treatment wetland is not working. And this is why, because in sanitation engineering, in comparison to conventional technologies like activated sludge, trickling filter, lagoon, even lagoon. Lagoon is also a nature-based solution, very simple way.
Yeah.
Treatment wetland arrived later. So when sanitation engineering came out with the main solution, treatment wetland was not there. And so the main implementation and planning and strategy of wastewater treatment that was in after 60s, more or less, treatment wetland was not there as an option. So we were trying to chasing the market, let me say, as a group, let me say in this way. And we were late. And this is why it's interesting, because IWA, International Water Association, by Von Sperling, published 6 very famous open access books about wastewater treatment.
Okay, yeah.
There was one general and one for each technology. There was activated sludge, there was lagoon and whatever. And we missed the volume of treatment wetland. And the working group on mainstreaming treatment wetland in the last 10 years developed the volume 7. So now we have the volume 7 on treatment wetland officially in the series of wastewater treatment solutions suggested by IWA in terms of guidelines of design. But we arrived with 20 years later, something like this. So it's not easy to enter in the convincing people that were designing activated sludge since 30 years that they can switch to treatment wetland if you are below 5,000 person equivalent. It's not immediate.
I guess better late than never arriving to the party. And you can always say you're fashionably late, because when we think of treatment wetlands, we spoke a lot about, the water treatment aspect, but I mean, they deliver so many more benefits in an urban area, even if it's a subsurface flow wetland, because you still have vegetation. So you got the cooling benefits because there's active evaporation from these systems. You have the amenity benefits, plants, looks nice, biodiversity as well. I guess it's one of the most multifunctional of the many nature-based solutions, owing partly to its massive footprint in many cases, but also to its versatility being, subsurface, but also surface. And so, better late than never to the party, because I guess now, with well-researched guidelines and rules of thumb, as you say, and a lot of these systems are designed, at least first planned based on rules of thumb, at least we now have an ability to, provide credible designs and to provide a reference for people to actually say, hey, we're going to try this. It's been researched. Here's some of the evidence, and hopefully it'll work.
Yeah, and this is why let me use this podcast also to advertise a bit all the work that the community did, in which I was lucky enough to participate, because at a certain moment, still with IWA, we published another open access book that is called Nature-Based Solution for Wastewater Treatment. And we listed all the, not only treatment wetland, there are the pond, there are all the solution, green wall applied to greywater treatment. But what we were looking for is not just guidelines in that book, but also fact sheet on case studies. So these had been applied, probably was the same for the implementation of green blue infrastructure in the past, to say, guys, see, this has been applied with success here at this size, results published. So this is a trustable technology, and follow the fact sheet on the sizing to at least have the right number at the beginning to plan the implementation. And this was a huge work that we did. The book is quite nice. And there are these 3 books, open access, that came out the last 10 years, the volume 7 that I already said, the wetland technology that was edited by, I was among the editor, but the main editor was Gunther again. And nature-based solution for wastewater treatment, I was among the editor, but the first editor was Catherine Cross. So the idea is there. They are outside there. They are open access. Have a look, being curious and being open-minded if you are to propose some technology for wastewater treatment. And we didn't touch the topic of circular economy, but also reuse.
Yeah, as I said, many benefits from just this one technology, but this technology also takes many forms. But yeah, we'll put those links in the show notes. So if anyone wants to get started in the world of treatment wetlands, I guess go to those books. I also certainly know of they call it the Bible of treatment wetlands, which came out in the early 90s by the authors Cadillac and Knight. Recently, I heard that book's getting a new edition. So once that's out, I think it's also worth having a look at as well.
Yeah, there is, just let me be the representative of the group. There is the second phase of the Bible that was Treatment Wetland second edition. That is Cadillac Knight and Scott Wallace. And now it was 2009. And I personally studied almost everything of my knowledge on treatment wetland on that book. And now is getting out the third edition that is slightly different title from Jamie Nivala and other authors, and is getting there. It should be out by this year. So, and this another, we are talking about books of more than 1,500 pages. So they are really...
A bit of light bedtime reading. Do it every night for a bit and you'll get through it eventually. But yeah, lots on treatment wetlands, real deep dive that we haven't really had for this particular technology. But of course, it being a nature-based solutions episode, it wouldn't be complete without me clearly checking on your preferred terminology. You mentioned terminology just now being a headache, but you're actively using the term nature-based solutions, whereas there's plenty other terms there. Any particular reason for that preference?
Well, I'm using this question to present also a little bit the company. So the third part of the story, we started to chat about treatment wetland during my PhD, but actually during the period abroad with Gunther, he suggested me a company in Italy that was IRIDRA, that is a small medium enterprise, and specifically Fabio Masi. We met in a conference, the Wetpol, and he told me, we have these 2 conferences, one per year, Wetpol and ICWS of IWA. I went to Wetpol in Nantes with the good feedback of Gunther to IRIDRA, but also Gunther in parallel had given a good feedback to Fabio, to myself. So we matched each other, and the IRIDRA offered me to go to work through IRIDRA after the postdoc. And so it's where I am since now more than 10 years. And I became also partner of IRIDRA in this moment. So why I'm saying this? Because it's a nice story of the link between the terminology. Because IRIDRA is an engineering company. We also do research project a lot, applied research. But IRIDRA started mainly on sustainable water management and treatment wetland. But in the recent last 5 years, let me say, we switch and we present ourselves as a nature-based solution expert. nature-based solution expert. Why? Mainly because our main market we are from Italy, so our main market is Europe. And NBS is the word that the European Commission has selected to push a lot on this policy.
Yeah.
So we decided, okay, the IRIDRA of the future should, of course, we do treatment wetland, but we should be NBS expert. On one side, because we are. On the other side, because we imagine that it's not only treatment wetland, but now we work with stormwater, all the concept of your field, sponge city. This is why we met. And to do so, the beauty is that you need to have a multidisciplinary group. So again, the liaison with your comment about multidisciplinarity, because at the beginning, IRIDRA was having engineer, of course, but two of the founder was a chemist, Fabio Masi, and a biologist, Giulio Conte. The other founder was Nicola Martinuzzi, and then Riccardo Bresciani. Let me mention them because I'm here thanks to them. Now that we are moving in other application of NBS, we are integrating architecture, landscaper, agronomist, expert in social science, urban planner. So we recognize the value of NBS as a multidisciplinary solution.
Yeah.
This is why I am closing to the technology, because the beauty of the definition of European Commission that is a little bit large. I mean, it's not so strict, but the key concept for me is nature-based solution try to solve in a single solution different challenges. So the multidisciplinarity of nature-based solution is the beauty of this terminology that is very broad on the other sense. So you have to always connect NBS for which challenge, otherwise it's not clear. So is NBS for wastewater, is NBS for pollution, is NBS for stormwater, and you enter in a sector or in another sector of people that are studying this since 30 years, not talking about NBS. So this is the tricky part that we have in this moment with the technology, but the term is so nice. But I also like green blue infrastructure. If you want, I can tell you why.
Okay. I use both NBS and blue-green infrastructures depending on context. And I mean, I'm sort of swaying more towards the NBS side now. But yeah, I guess that is the versatility of it. You know, nature-based, we know we're harnessing the power of nature. And yeah, IRIDRA, as you mentioned, just a few other facts there, formed in November 1998. So apparently it's Italy's oldest engineering company that specializes in these kinds of nature-based solutions. Even though you only start with treatment wetlands and sustainable tech, I think, you know, it's natural with time that you branch out after mastering one. Then you move on to, you know, expanding your portfolio.
Yes, it's nice. And they also, for me, it was the normal way. I mean, we fell in love immediately because there were also the research projects. So I was coming from academia. I would like to become professor, but it was not the right moment in Italy. And for personal reason, I didn't want to go abroad, where I could find an engineering that is designing in reality these systems, but also participating in project like there was FP5, FP7, Horizon 2020, Horizon Europe, Interreg Life. So
all these European grants that I guess allowed practitioners to also participate.
100%. And this is also let me feel, if you ask me by heart, I would not mention myself an engineer. I mention myself as a researcher. And this is like having a company that is not only a private company that is believing so much in innovation. So it's very, very nice.
I find that nowadays, you know, if you want to keep ahead, especially in this fast moving world, and of course with AI now having knowledge at your fingertips, you need to be able to do part knowledge work or research and part, you know, the practical implementation. I mean, I'm just thinking, you know, back to the book I read written by, well, it's the Almanac of Naval Ravikant. But one of the quotes in there is that the most powerful profession in the world is the applied scientist or the practical researcher, if you want to call it that as well as the alternative term. So, yeah.
Yeah, and it is nice because in Europe and especially in Italy, we still have a little bit of academics, let me say, not be offended, the academics friends, but to academic. While it was interesting because last month I've been in the conference of low impact development, to mention another term. We are still talking about the same stuff in US. And what impressed me about the US approach is that they have universities that are dedicated to the third mission. So they are dedicated to study for giving information to the practitioner, in a certain way. And there was a nice presentation about a professor about this aspect. And the key message was pure research and innovation should go in two directions. Academic should indicate the innovation to the practitioner, but they also have to listen to the practitioner because they are the front edge. So we design the system every day in real condition, we know what we would like to have in terms of innovation to drive the innovation as quick as possible. So there should be much more exchange. And I found in the Horizon Europe approach, this exchange is existing, and it's amazing for me to have the possibility to work on this project because there is really this exchange and willingness to listen practitioner with academic, with research, modellers, and whatever.
Now, the practical element and listening to the practitioners, I think then really allows the research to make real world impact, because then you're not trying to develop the new technology or the new way of using the technology in isolation. I guess the worst thing as a researcher that you can face is you have some nice fancy publication, and then when you bring it to the practitioner, they're not interested because it just doesn't fit. It's either too expensive, it just doesn't match the way they do things. And yeah.
But even there is this concept, very nice, very similar to the recent living lab concept. And let me comment again the huge work of the community of treatment wetland, because why, if we have treatment wetland in this moment so reliable as a technology, is because since the beginning, there was a group of people that was starting to go outside and monitoring in real condition the first application. So without the bunch of applied research, I have to say, collection of data that is monitoring very well, a nice case study in real condition, maybe you will not publish in top Q1 papers, but that are the data that drive the innovation of the technology, the real implementation. So go outside and monitor real system in real condition in long term is still a research that has been done, but is still very needed in nature-based solution in general. So future researcher, don't be scared to publish in Q2 and Q3 journal if your data are very good and taken from reality, because we need this core of evidence from nature-based solution. This is a message that I like to bring.
And oftentimes has more far-reaching consequences and benefits for the practice, for the advancement of knowledge than you would expect. So it's part of the challenge with nature-based solutions, because without this monitoring, without this data, results and performance remains invisible. And so how do you build a convincing argument for implementing these systems? Because they're not going to replace conventional systems. They're going to be complementary, and they have to be strategically aligned with what we currently have in infrastructure.
And even more, because imagine when you start to have review paper, you look only peer review paper. If the peer review paper are only on lab scale system, the message that is coming from the review is the technology is still not ready for we have this concept in Horizon Europe of technological readiness level, no? The technology is not ready for real market, but it's not true just because there was no interest to go to monitor a full-scale system, because the sample that you can take is not 100% precise with the monitoring framework that you should have for publishing in certain journal. Okay, but they are still real data. They are telling you something from reality. So they have a big value. And this is one of the roles that we tend to have as IRIDRA in this research. So we design big system, we take some risk, and we put this big system available to the research project to monitor a full-scale environment. Just we don't have the money to monitor our system by ourselves. So the research investment is on personnel and cost for covering the sampling. But these are data. The systems are already out there. They are innovative. They are there to be monitored. So this is them. Otherwise, we risk to stay stuck in the loop to say it's promising, but it's still not ready. That often is not true.
There's always the cautious mindset. They're like, okay, well, we kind of know from the science, but we're not quite sure. We don't want to pull the trigger and say, hey, let's now, roll it out quite widely. I guess that academic cautiousness is still prevalent in a lot of publications around nature-based solutions as well. I certainly see it.
Yeah, and to bring you an example, for instance, what we used to do for support this innovation, to try to go with some specific innovation as soon as possible to full scale. For instance, we participated in a project that is now a MED. It was about green wall for greywater treatment. You touched with Bellico this approach.
Yep.
And 7 years ago now already, when we won this project and we had the budget to realize full-scale system. But imagine when we were doing the design, I reviewed the literature and there were 5 papers out there on small-scale system, including the one of Bellico. What does it mean to take the indication from a few square meter panel from a lab to design a real green wall for treating greywater at scale like 30 square meter, 50 square meter? There is a matter of applied research, I would say, engineering of something that is completely new and never applied at that scale, that has a value. But if you don't take the risk to go at that scale, you risk to stay stuck to say, it's promising, but. So our role often in this project, especially in the Innovation Action Horizon Europe, is to say, there is this budget, this is innovative, but in small scale, go in reality and try to implement at full scale and monitor at full scale. And the amount of how much you can learn from people, multidisciplinary, starting to make real an idea that is coming from a lab, it's an incredible experience. Quite scary because you take some risk.
Yep, very
but
true.
Still, it's super nice.
I mean, that's, I can relate to that in a modeling sense, because I bring in a lot of scientific findings and new models developed through academic research into practice. And sometimes, you have to take a certain risk. And, when you're demonstrating the results to stakeholders, to, I guess, talk it through with them, to try and help them to understand how the model works, what dynamics are being shown, and then to agree on some key assumptions that you're going to make to ensure that your results are, in a way, conservative, but at the same time realistic, so that you're not over-designing the system. And I guess when you go from from numbers on a digital dashboard to a real build system, a lot of these concerns, these worries, they're often amplified, because then you're actually putting, stuff in the ground.
Yes. But it's super.
Yeah, no, definitely. And so, IRIDRA's worked across Europe, but I believe also globally as well. You've done some quite high-profile projects as well. Tell me a few memorable projects that IRIDRA's been embarked on.
On one side, there are the international research project, but we already touched. But also we used to design, especially treatment wetland in this case, at significant scale worldwide. Mm-hmm. Of course, in that case, we deliver all the service, basic design, detailed design, but we cannot be the local. So we work in collaboration with local company. But for instance, one of the biggest that I previously mentioned a bit is the Orey wastewater treatment plant. Mm-hmm. It's currently the biggest secondary treatment system in Europe, is in Moldova.
Okay.
For 20,000 person equivalent. Now there are a biggest one in Red Sea, designed by another company, to 60,000. But these are nice benchmark for our community of treatment wetland to break a little bit, because another idea is that treatment wetland can work only on small scale. Mm-hmm. That is not true if you have sufficiently cheap land. This is a key concept.
Yeah.
But at the same time, at global level, is worth to mention that we are partner of Global Wetland Technology. Mm-hmm. Global Wetland Technology is an association of company expert in treatment wetlands. So the idea is that we are small, so we are not the big engineering that is doing anything, but still we cluster among the biggest company of more or less of the same size of IRIDRA worldwide. So we cover different countries from UK, France, US, Australia, Austria, Belgium, Germany. I'm mentioning all of them because I became president last year, and they could be offended if I forget one.
New responsibilities, remembering all the countries and affiliations.
Yeah. That is nice, because it was an honor for me. Yeah. Because in this Global Wetland Technology, still from the Greek side, we have many big names, no? I already mentioned Fabio Masi from IRIDRA, but we have Dirk Esser, we have Scott Wallace, we have Tom Hadley. Big name also in the paper. Now I'm mentioning the one Martin Redesberger. So many of us, we publish Christoph Platzer. So we for the people that are coming to conference, there is still this feeling, guys, these are the one that wrote that paper. And they asked me to become the president. I was thinking they were crazy, but essentially they want to guide a little bit their innovation to bring global wetland technology also to the new generation and treatment wetland in general. So it's an honor, quite stressful, I have to say, but it's also, it's nice. I'm president.
But it's also amazing to see the open-mindedness of this community and also the willingness and, the real vision that they want to make sure this knowledge survives over generations, is passed on, it's actively utilized. And, I think it's a very beautiful story and a beautiful journey to watch as well, because it also shows that this tried and tested technology is still around. It is very much active. It is very much used and has become even more versatile in the last 30 years.
Yeah, it's funny because it's not a market movement. It was more a sharing moment a bit. And it's funny because we have a Signal chat that is similar to the feeling that you can have to the conference, in which if you go to a wetland conference, you talk every day about the wetland. Then you go outside, you have dinner, post-dinner drink, beer. And at a certain moment, very natural, like the talk that we are having now between me and you, at 11 p.m. you start again to talk about wetland, to something that you saw in a presentation in the morning in front of a beer. And this chat that we have is exactly the same feeling. So we have different time zones. People are starting to ask, did you have this problem? What do you have experience in this and that? And we exchange on Signal, and there is this feeling about being among, not the only one, of course. The treatment wetland community is much larger than just global wetland technology, but still, it's nice to be inside.
Much like how kids shared their experiences with their own different horror games as they were released back in their childhood, you're sharing experiences with treatment wetlands on a daily basis as well.
A bit. Sometimes I have this feeling. Then, of course, we have to manage also the serious stuff, but sometimes I have this feeling.
I guess just without the jump scares.
Without the jump scare, yes.
Yeah. And so, you're based in Italy. You've been there. You know what the practice is like. You've spoken to a lot of practitioners. What's the general receptivity of nature-based solutions across the country?
Well, at national level, there is a lot of movement. In this moment in Italy is going very quickly. What I observe is that it depends on the challenge. Yeah. Maybe there is one challenge that is going faster than another. For instance, in this moment, in terms of stormwater, a little bit jeopardized, but considering that we started very late in comparison to other countries, there is a lot of movement. But there is, for instance, Italy launched the Nature-Based Solution Hub that is under the umbrella of Network Nature. And so this idea of clustering, in that case, mainly the academic and the public authorities around nature-based solution to keep the momentum and to share the results and cluster among all these projects about nature-based solution. There is the interest of the local, often not speaking as a nature-based solution. This is the point, because if you go narrowing down to the local stakeholder, you start to talk about NBS, often is a too general concept. So you have to narrow down to their need. But I'm thinking about out of our topic, there is the pollution, there is the stormwater, but there is nature-based solution for climate change adaptation, especially in terms of heat wave reduction. At least half of Italy is suffering a lot about heat waves during the summer. The heat waves is bringing to the concept of health and well-being. So recognizing again, and this is matching again with this green-blue infrastructure. So recognizing that green and blue element in the city are infrastructure that are delivering ecosystem service. This concept is entering in the mind, a little bit jeopardized. But there are many different applications. People that were doing NBS not knowing that they are doing NBS, but linking with NBS is helping with the financial, because since this is the umbrella concept of Europe, even the funding from Europe that is arriving to nation and to regional level, keeping this keyword, and this is helping to access funding to implement real project out of the research, real application. So if we want to use IRIDRA as an indicator, we more than doubled the team in less than 5 years.
Oh,
and
wow.
This is because we are following the NBS wave. Of course, we could do better, but there is a lot of momentum in Italy. And this is why we decided to switch from referring us as a company expert only in treatment wetland to as a company expert in nature-based solution. There is an umbrella of option that we can propose according to the need that can change.
And it shows buzzwords can be used for, good reason, and can often then lead to opportunities to then create change, at the local municipal level, but also nationally. So yeah, nothing bad against throwing buzzwords around.
Yeah. And the main driver is essentially, since they are multidisciplinary, if properly designed, you can renovate. They are starting to be linked to urban renovation. So if a city wants to renovate a road or has a new park to be developed, if you design properly the NBS multifunctional inside this element, they don't care if there is also an additional innovative NBS, because you deliver everything as a unicum project of renovation. And this is a big added value of NBS. We can, infiltrate small circular economy idea or small concept inside a bigger project of renovation of a road, a square, a park, and whatever. One of the treatment wetland that we designed, this is 15 years ago, is the water park of Gorla Maggiore. It's a park. Citizens, they are using as a park. Actually, inside is included a treatment wetland for combined sewer overflow. It is a big concept. This was is a nice example to close all what we said in this talk, because we designed the system very in advance in comparison to the innovation. Especially in Italy, it was the first treatment wetland for a CSO at food scale. We included in a park. It was so nicely multidisciplinary without even talking about NBS, because it was 2010, something like this.
But you just managed to sneak a CSO treatment system into the design as well.
And we have been invited to put this as a demo case in a project that was called Openness. I was not even in IRIDRA yet, but the concept is that it was so innovative that entered in a research project like Openness. Openness was one of the first projects of FP7 funding scheme on ecosystem service monitoring. The monitoring of Gorla Maggiore was one of the case that drive a little bit, together with all the other example and case studies, to the concept of ecosystem service, from which nature-based solution also get an attention. So this idea of, in Italy, we used to say, throw the heart beyond the fence, something like this. This is the translation. So to be brave enough to implement innovation when you have the possibility, monitor, so create the evidence of monitoring that is working, and use this as an example to disseminate a concept. It's what happened with Gorla Maggiore, but is what we did try to, personally in my career, I'm trying to do anytime that we can. And we have many papers outside Gorla Maggiore Water Park, fact sheet. It's a nice example, and it's still very used by citizens. And citizens, they are almost not even aware that there is a treatment wetland treated CSO.
Fantastic. I must go visit it on my next trip to Italy at some point. I'll let you know.
It's in the North Lombardia. It's manageable.
I can just jump on a train, do a day trip. Perfect.
Yes. Let me know. I will come.
Very easy to reach. Perfect. And so, what are some exciting things that you're working on now, and what's in store for you?
Okay. There was a big project that was just closed 1 year ago. It was the most, because this is why there is this connection between me and you, because inside IRIDRA, I'm slightly going towards the sponge city and green blue infrastructure concept. So in the last 5 years, I followed more this kind of project. There was a big project in Lombardia called the Metropolitan Sponge City of Milan. They implemented all in a row 90 intervention in 32 municipalities, and we designed 26 of them. It was financed by recovery funds, so very rush. It was big pressure. And now we also following the training based on this. So it's a nice story because it's not just infrastructure implementing, but it's a way of driving change. So I'm going to do the last training, very local training in very small town. So to try to disseminate as much as possible in the territory, the knowledge. And this is one. If I have to mention one instead on treatment wetland is on circular economy. So all the way by which we try to bridge the knowledge of treatment wetland to recover non-conventional resources, either treating and reusing wastewater for fertigation. This is quite typical. Or treating and reusing grey water. Or implementing this concept of treatment wetland in green architecture. So the green wall that in full scale that are treating and reusing grey water, for instance, for toilet flushing, replenish. Circular economy of water with treatment wetland is super nice. And we have a couple of projects. We had IRIDRA, now we have Cardimed. We have a super nice project that is called UR1, that is an interreg, is a little bit less research, in which we came out with a new definition. So you are happy. We defined NBS that are snob and NBS that are smart.
Okay.
In terms of water, from the water perspective, okay? And NBS that are snob, they are all the NBS that doesn't care about the water demand. So you want to trees, you want to shadow, you pergola, green roof, whatever. But at a certain, and you have also to irrigate. Someone is going to come with aqueduct and giving you the water. Smart NBS instead are all the NBS that are producing non-conventional water that can be used for irrigating the other NBS. And you can create this cycle of snob and smart. And this is a definition, and for instance, treatment wetland, recycling, wastewater, and whatever. And we developed a catalog that was mainly for local stakeholder because we simplify the concept of water loop and helping with this catalog the local stakeholder to investigate possible loop change in the new project. Because if you came too technical, you have this technical barrier. Instead, snob and smart, anyone is immediately understanding what
I love the terms, yeah. I mean, snobs and smarts. I mean, what a creative way of then further subdividing it. And
this is thanks to also social scientists that is helping you to, in this project is always multidisciplinary from the perspective of economy, but especially also the social part. So
but it shows
it's nice. Everything that is coming outside from, it's iterative, is difficult, is not super linear as engineer-like, but is much more fruitful. Yes.
The power of collaboration. But I look forward to seeing where that takes you. And at some point, we'd have to revisit this in a part 2 on circular economy as well. Because, we touched upon it, but I think there's still a lot of potential there for using NBS for circular economy. But like I do with every guest, Anacleto, I'd love to get into more detailed questions about you and your journey, and even more about some of the way you think, so that listeners can learn more about you. And so we spoke a lot about innovation. You mentioned it earlier, and we had a brief chat on that. But what does the word innovation truly mean to you, and how has it shaped the way you approach challenges, opportunities in your work?
Yes, we spoil a little bit this reply, but essentially in a nutshell, for me, innovation is everything that is going beyond the status quo, even a bit, not to be disruptive per se. If it is disruptive, it's better, but even going beyond the state of the art, but proving that it works. So go outside, test it, collect the information that is needed to prove that your innovation is working. This link, I'm not 100% sure if it is right to link to innovation, but it's what I believe.
I guess it's the validation of the idea, and so important. I mean, we've seen this in our own experiences with NBS and adoption of NBS, or just any technology generally. People will want to make sure that it works, that it does what it's intended to do. So what better way than to monitor it?
Agree, 100%.
Was there a key moment, book, paper, event, or person that completely changed the course of your career or your mindset? You told the story of Günther Langergraber, but any other key moments?
Well, in this case, I want to mention again Luca Ridolfi, my professor, because it was really the last course of my engineering master, and I was completely lost. I mean, I was thinking what I'm going to do. I'm going to really do the engineer. Actually, I'm doing now, but it's okay. At least in NBS. And the training the course, the lecture that he was giving, a little bit more on the research-oriented part, I would say that saved my career from a certain perspective. The other is Fabio Masi in IRIDRA. I used to say that I have two fathers, let me say, in my career. One is the academic one, and is Luca, and the other one is the practical practitioner one, that is Fabio. So these two persons really drive my career where I am now, and I'm very grateful.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Now it's having good mentors, but also people that come into your life and just give you direction all of a sudden. I think that's it's a moment you'll always remember. Certainly the way for me.
Agree.
So lots of projects, lots of research, but also practical research. I often find that sometimes that's takes a lot more time and effort because you have to make sure it works in the field, and the results often mean a lot for practice. So time management becomes an interesting issue. So what tips and strategies can you offer in terms of time management? How do you maintain a balance between your horror gaming time and aka personal time? Do you still play horror games and your professional time?
I still play video games, but just because my wife is falling asleep late in the night.
Okay.
No, I'm not the best example, but I'm trying to improve. And the main change that we are doing is to try to keep separated private life with working life with very simple things. For instance, I removed all the pop-up notification from the smartphone. That horrible feeling that when you wake up, you see that there are all these pop-up and you have to decide to open the email. Of course, you are like addicted. You are going to click on the app of the email.
Oh, yeah.
But at least it's not popping up in front of you. The other is that we adopted in the office, we want to break this writing on WhatsApp for everything. So WhatsApp is for any one of us we are using in private life communication, and opening WhatsApp web in the middle of the screen during the work was even annoying because you have your own chat there. And so, for instance, we are using Slack now. Okay. Slack is very nice because you can set the notification pause. You can decide the hour in which you can write, but you know that they are not reading. So if you are doing late, you can write, but you are not disturbing the people. They are going to read the day after. And we separated this asynchronic communication. That was a very good starting step. And the second, I'm trying to not work on the weekend. Of course, to do so, I'm working more than 8 hours per day, but at least Saturday and Sunday is a break, a real break, not just sleeping.
But really making a hard stop. Yeah. Valuable tips. I can certainly relate to them. And, well, notifications, definitely. I sleep much better and wake up much better ever since disabling them. Although I don't think that means that I don't check my emails in the morning. You still do. You're still tempted. But I think, you get it to a state where you feel excited rather than, dreading the email inbox. But definitely very good tips. I'll have to take on the other two and see how they can be implemented in my life as well. I'm terrible with apps like Slack or Discord, as you probably know from my lack of writing in Discord, but maybe that'll change in future. What is your favorite childhood memory?
Well, I mentioned my professional father. I want to mention my real father in this moment. It's a little bit emotional, I have to say. Because my father passed away last year, so it's still hurting a bit.
Sorry to hear.
And I have these memories about the summer holiday in Agropoli because I'm originally from the south of Italy. I spent all my childhood summer 2 months in a row on the sea with the grandma, all my family. It's a nice moment. Also a nice way to remember my father. So thanks for this question.
Yeah. I lost my father as well, and it weighs heavy on you, and I guess
it's getting better, but still
It takes time, but the silver lining, in a way, it brings back a lot of these memories to you and you think of them fondly as well. So, yeah. Thanks for sharing. What was one of the most challenging situations that you have ever faced in your career to date, and how did you overcome it?
It was the first time. I was in IRIDRA since few years now. It was at the beginning, but the very first time in which I had a project in which I was left a little bit alone. So I was a little bit responsible of the decision that I was taking. And this was an exercise of Nicola Martinuzzi that I want to thank about. And especially delivering on time. So that feeling that when you start the week and you think that you have delivered by the end of the week, your decision, and you were thinking, I will never be able to do it. But when you do it at the end, it's like you are learning, okay, it's possible. So next time it will be stressful anyway, but a little bit less stressful because I already passed through it. And until you are not put in that specific situation, if you are always revised as a junior, let me say, you will never have this feeling and you will never move towards the seniorship.
Being thrown in the deep end. And I think, great leaders are ones that can mentor those, that they're responsible for and give them a bit of that challenge and push them a bit. So, yeah.
Understanding the right moment for doing this is very tricky, very tricky.
But yeah, as you said, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And in this case, if you've seen it once and you're capable of it, I guess it gives you more confidence for the next one.
Yes, I agree.
And so for young professionals starting out, and maybe also those who want to go into nature-based solutions, what advice can you offer them?
Well, essentially to be curious and to study and understanding. Mainly, I heard some of your episode about AI. All of us, we have to face this big change. Mm. And the only way of facing this change is to keep the value of human beings, that is deep understanding of what we are doing. So we cannot afford anymore to be professional copy and paste without understanding what we are doing. And for understanding what we are doing, you need to be curious, update yourself, study. Otherwise, I don't know what to expect us, but you are the expert of AI. So you are the one that should calm down the situation.
I mean, yeah, critical thinking skills and, being able to, really just dive deep. Local context is perhaps the most important in nature-based solutions. I see far too much copy-paste as well. And, that's something an AI can do now. You tell it, I have this site, give me an NBS. It'll give you something, but it's usually not good enough. So, yeah.
And if I may add something on this comment, especially being curious on the topic that is not your topic. Because NBS is about designing something that must be multidisciplinary. Correct. But for being really multidisciplinary, you need to be respectful of the other competencies. So there is no boss and the other. So it's not engineering and then let's ask the architect to let work on it. And even on the other way around. So, but for being able to be in this discussion, you have to have a basic knowledge of almost any aspect of the multidisciplinarity of the NBS that you are designing. And this a lot because we used to be trained in silos on our specific skills.
There are no shortcuts there. I mean, understanding things from first principles, you can do amazing things with it. And you also start to see the interconnections as well. So I certainly agree with that.
Absolutely. And it's also good for research, the interconnection, because it's where the best idea are coming out.
Oh, definitely. So yeah, be interdisciplinary, be curious, as you said. I do like that. And yeah, even though AI is, here and here to stay, I think there's ways that you can then also leverage that to increase your curiosity, increase your own knowledge, deepen your understanding, find the resources even that will get you to the knowledge much quicker. That's certainly one of the applications that I've used it for, and it's worked wonders. And so as we slowly get to the end of this episode, Anacleto, what would you most like to be remembered for? What is that existential question that, floats around in your head?
Well, essentially a nice guy and someone that lived an interesting life, if possible even meaningful, but is not fundamental. And that's it essentially. Nothing more than this.
Very simple.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do they say it in Italian? Bella vita?
Una
Dolce
bella vita. Sì. Una
Yeah.
dolce vita.
Yeah.
Dolce vita, it depends, because we can close with the movie feedback on Federico Fellini movie, and dolce vita was a little bit close to the concept of lazy life.
No.
But living, floating, I'm saying by myself that I used to be stressful often. So it's really a target that I hope to live. But it requests time and dedication also to be a nice guy, to be humble, to not offend the people if you're stressed. So
Bella vita then.
Step by step, you have to build this meaningful life.
No, indeed. It's been a pleasure to exchange this with you, to have met you as well, and to be actively involved in some of the activities that we're doing worldwide. So listeners, if you're in the NBS space, look out for us. We'll be in same group, similar events, participating together and constantly exchanging knowledge, and horror games as well to play. But yeah.
If I may, we launched the nature-based. We mentioned many groups, but we didn't mention the cluster of nature-based solution of IWA. So join us, because there we are trying to bridge different nature-based application under the umbrella of International Water Association.
Yeah, definitely. And there'll be workshops organized, and there'll be opportunities to get involved. So we'll put that definitely in the show notes. But as for you, Anacleto, where can people find you if they want to get in touch?
Mainly professionally LinkedIn. I'm quite active, and either IRIDRA's activities, mine activity, but a little bit also global wetland technology. If you follow the LinkedIn page, you can be updated on what we are doing. And if you want to learn more, instead, just visit our website.
Fantastic. We'll put that, as well as links to many other topics that we've covered on today's show, in the show notes. But thank you once again for coming onto the show and for sharing your journey, your story, and also a lot of your valuable knowledge on treatment wetlands, which we haven't really covered to date. So it's great to have this topic finally unpacked in detail.
Thank you very much, Peter, for inviting me.
And like I do with every guest, I always give my guest the final word. So one last message for the listeners to take away from today.
Being curious, and if you feel in the wrong path, there is always the possibility for a big switch, let me say. My career was a completely mess, but now it works.
Thank you very much. And that wraps up our suspenseful, fun and fascinating episode with Anacleto Rizzo. For more information on plants in ponds, the evolving horror game genre, Italian proverbs, or tips on technology implementation, check out the show notes for more information over at tgcpodcast.show. And as always, thank you listeners for tuning into this episode and for your feedback and support. If you are enjoying this show, I would be incredibly grateful if you could share this podcast with your family, friends, colleagues, and even fellow geeks. Follow this podcast on Spotify, Apple Music, and other podcast channels to stay up to date with the latest releases, or be part of the conversation on Instagram at tgcpodcast_official or our LinkedIn group. If you're curious about me or my work in general, you can also check out my website or social media. Head to petermbach.com, my YouTube channel, Peter Marcus Bach, that's Marcus with a C, or Instagram at petermbach87. Give me some feedback or suggest a future guest so that I can keep improving this show. The podcast's intro and outro song is called Starsky by Alex Karen. Stay tuned for our next episode and next guest to hear how they are tackling the grand challenges.